All right, Ashley, thank you so much for being here today. Tell me a little bit about who you went no contact with.
So I went no contact with my ex, and I often refer to him as the man related to the same child as me. Um, I try not to say his name because I just feel like I don't speak the name of a
Uh-huh.
I just don't. So the man that's related to the same child as me, we met in 2010,
Mhm.
December of 2010. And he's 4 years older than me. I was 22 at the time, and I saw him and was attracted to him,
Mhm.
right? No real experience in relationships. I was studying for my undergrad in college. My longest relationship at the time was probably 6 months, right?
Mhm.
So it was just a physical attraction. In fact, one of my other good friends at the time felt like, "Oh, he is really attractive." Like, you know?
Yeah.
And it just so happened that one of my closest friends who was with us at the time knew him.
Mhm.
Um, and when she saw him, she said, "I know him." And then she said, "But are you sure? Because I haven't heard great things about how he is
Oh,
with women, and I'm cleaning it up."
right.
So, being 22, being immature, underdeveloped, oh, girl, I was just like, "Oh, please, like, whatever, I don't just see if he's interested, right?" So she said, "Okay, I will." She did that night. She let him know that she had a friend that was interested and gave him my number. I'm really, really shy, so I didn't really like talk to him,
Mhm.
but the exchange was made. A few weeks or so passed. He hadn't reached out to me, so I went ahead and reached out to him. And he kind of felt like, "Oh, like, wow, like she's reaching out to me," as if like, I guess because I took the initiative, that kind of was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay," you know? And from that point on, again, I knew nothing about narcissism. This is something that a lot of people are learning about and are really educating themselves on today. But over 10 years ago, 15 years ago now, that wasn't even a thing.
No.
So what I entered in at that phase of it was the love bombing phase. And in a matter of 2 weeks, I felt like I had met the person that I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with.
Mhm.
I mean, everything that you could possibly think of, like the just loving me out loud. He had, got me a sentimental gift, engraved the bracelet with the day that we met. It was just he washed my hair, you know? And at
Yeah.
the time, I was living with my mom, and he would come over every single day. And I'm the oldest of 3, and my
Mhm.
mom was kinda like, "Okay, Ashley, I don't have a problem with him being here, but why is he here every day?" You know? And I'm like, "Mom, you don't know, like, it's just like, this is just how things are." And she was just like, "Ashley, I don't know, like, you might need to pump your brakes," you know?
Mhm.
And it just I felt like I found my person, like, I fell in love with him. And then he dropped the bomb on me. He told me after a month
Mhm.
that he needed to have a conversation with me, and, of course, I was worried, right?
Yeah.
And we were in because he didn't have a vehicle at the time, mind you, that's also something people need to pay attention to, and we were sitting down outside of his apartment, and he said, "I need to tell you something." And I was just like, "Okay, what is it?" And he says, "I know I told you that I lived with my aunt, but I'm really living with my baby mama."
Oh.
Yes. So I was like, "What?" Because this was nothing that I had ever experienced before.
Right.
Um, and I would tell my friend when I would go to pick him up, I would never go inside. He would always come and meet me at the car. But I never thought that I was picking him up from another woman's house because I had
Right.
never experienced that. And when he told me that at the perfect moment because I had already like fell for him at that
Mhm.
at that point. And I just was like, I don't, this is not what I do. Like, I don't, are living or cohabitating with other women.
Mhm.
And I said, "So you know what? We're gonna do whatever we have to do, and we're gonna get you. We're gonna move in together. We're gonna get you out of there because I just don't do that."
You thought he was
And
stuck. He
uh,
made it seem like he was stuck.
yeah, and this is where I'm at, but it's nothing. I sleep on the sofa. We're not intimate. It's nothing like that, right? And at
Mhm.
22 years old, I went to private school. I was very sheltered. I believed him. I had no reason not to. So from December to that was the love bombing phase. We met like December 10th of
Mhm.
2010. By February, the first week of February in 2011, we were in our first apartment. I wasted no time. I meant I don't do this, right?
Mhm.
But during the phase of apartment hunting, we were together, we were going to, different apartments, filling out applications, and there's I like to say that throughout life or different experiences, God will always give you breadcrumbs. And during this
Mhm.
phase of the relationship, I received my first breadcrumb, which probably was him saying he lived with another woman. But another breadcrumb came in the form of the
Mhm.
office manager at the leasing office of where I was applying to get into the apartment, the both of us. And we went in there together. We filled out the application. We put both of our information on the application. And she said, "Okay, I should have this back to you within the next few days," right?
Right.
So I said, "Okay," I was excited and, this is going to be our journey together. And few days went by. I decided to stop by the apartment complex on my way home from work.
Mhm.
So I went in there. I asked to speak to the leasing manager, and she sat me down and she said, "I have an opening for you, but I do not have one for him." And I
Oh.
said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "You need to get away from him."
Oh, but well, wait. So she was being very direct, but did you know at the time why she was telling you to get away from him?
I did not. And I was shocked. So I said, "Well, why?" And she
Mhm.
said, "There are things that came up in his background and you need to leave. He, he cannot stay here." And I was just like, "What do you mean? Like, what is it?" Right.
Right.
So, of course, I'm not thinking like, "Oh, I need to listen to this stranger." So
Right.
I said, "You know what? We're just not going to live here. We're going to find somewhere else." And now I'm going to go ahead and apply for apartments and I'm just going to exclude him.
Mhm.
And that's what I did. And we got into our first apartment. It was a studio apartment in
Mhm.
a town probably about 15 minutes from where I'm from. And that's what we did. And we moved in together. When we moved in together, I feel like he waited for that moment to reveal who he was. But I'll say this again, before I got to the us moving in together, there was something else that I saw.
Mhm.
And again, I was just so young and I was so naive. And I didn't think that I would ever experience anything like this. It was
Mm.
just no way. We were at my mom's house, which is where I'm at now. We were standing in my mom's kitchen. And this was one of the nights that I went and picked him up. And we were standing in the kitchen. He was almost like in this weird mood, like kind of down, kind of just like stressed or
Mhm.
whatever. And I remember what he had on. He had on a long sleeve, like thermal. It was white. And at the time in Louisiana, it was cold. So, he had that on. And we were standing in the kitchen and he was complaining about the mother of his kids, which is also a siren to women who are dealing with men who are polluting the mother of a man, their kids to another woman. That is something that women need to pay attention to. But he was talking about the fact that they had got into it and he was like calling her and I just need to get away from her. And he was just like, we
Mhm.
got into it. And I noticed his sleeve on his thermal, the that went around his wrist. There was blood on it.
Mhm.
And I asked him, I said, "What is this?"
Right.
And he said, "Man, I told you, me and that, we got into it." And I said, "Did you hit her?" And he said, yeah, I hear her. I can't remember exactly how he said it, but he did own up to actually doing it. And I was like, whoa. I said, that is not okay. That is not okay. I said, you need to call her and you need to apologize to her
Mhm.
for that. And he picked up the phone. He called her. She didn't answer, but she called back and he apologized to her. Now, why didn't I take that as a reason to run and never look back? Some would say, maybe again, like I said, I was young, I was immature. You know, my my mom and dad got divorced when I was really young. I didn't have a relationship with him, so abandonment. I don't know. But the love bombing and me thinking that this was my person and that these things that he was experiencing with another woman he'd never experienced this with me. I'm in
Yeah.
college, I'm graduating, I have a good head on my shoulders, I come from a good family. He would often refer to my family as the Huxtables, right? Oh, they're these uppity black folk and they all went to college and whatever. So in
Yeah.
my mind, I felt like, whatever he's experiencing with her, he never experienced with me because this is not there's not going to be many issues because why would there be? I don't have a reason to be this way. So
Mhm.
we moved in together. I didn't tell my mom because at that point, my mom had sat me down and had a conversation. And she said, Ashley, I don't think that this is not the person for you. And at the time, again, I was 22.
Right.
The lady that he had kids, the babies were 6 months old. They were twins. And yeah.
See
And my
that
mom's
all
like,
this is only hindsight stuff that you can look back and be
yeah,
like, "This was" at the time, he seemed honest. In fact, I was like, "Why would he put his name on the application?" Like, you would think if somebody had such a bad past that they would not risk that, but, like, I know that he lied about some things, but I can see why it felt
yeah,
like he was somebody you could still trust even after that because look at how
yeah,
he's moving. He's telling you the
yeah.
truth about things that are happening too.
Yeah. And I had no reason to not believe him.
Right.
There was no reason not to. Why would he lie to me, right? So my mom sat me down and she was like, Ashley, I don't think that you're not ready for someone who has two babies. You're 22. You don't know the first thing about being a stepmom. And of course, I wasn't hearing it. It's like, what do you know about, and me and my mom have a great relationship. And it's just, sometimes we think that our parents don't know what they're talking about, and they really do. But what I didn't know at the time was that my mom ran a background check on him. And I had no idea, but she was
Mhm.
telling me because of what she saw.
Oh. Ah.
So I moved out. My mom and it was very tense because she was hurt. I didn't tell her. And she came back home from work and it's like I was gone. And I know that really hurt her because we have a really, really close relationship. And that's not anything that she had ever experienced, for me.
Yeah.
So we moved out together. And I mean, we had like nothing. We were sleeping on the floor. We had no furniture. Like I said, I'm in college, working part-time, and I want to say Best Buy at the time,
Mhm.
making 780 an hour,
Mhm.
and here we are moving into this. Mind you, he also did not have a job.
Oh,
He did not have a job.
when he
So
moved in, he didn't have a job
he
or he never?
he did not have a job when we got together and when he moved in with me.
Mhm.
And he was like, "Oh, don't worry about that. I'm gonna find a job. It's nothing for me to find a job. We just have to if you don't mind." I was like, "Well, do you have a resume?" He didn't have a resume. I sat with him in my mom's living room,
Right, and helped him get
created his entire resume, went through everything, his job experience. I did it all. He did end up getting a job. And everything shifted when we moved in together. It's like once he knew that there was no going back and he had me where he wanted me, he could be who he is. And I remember the very first time he I questioned I guess the trust between he and I. He
Mhm.
was working at this it was this place where they washed a lot of like hospital bedding and and I would before we moved in together, I would wake up at 4 a.m. to drive from my mom's house to pick him up 20 minutes away, to bring
Mhm.
him to his job for 5 a.m., come back to my mom's house, get some rest before my 8 o'clock class. at the college here.
Okay.
And did all of that until we moved in together. And the first time that I felt like, okay, this man is manipulating me was we were at my mom's house and he plugged his phone up to charge underneath my mom's computer desk. And he went in my mom's like den area and he took a nap. Now, prior to that, I had access to his phone. I had the passwords. There was nothing that he was hiding from me. So I noticed that his phone kept going off
Mhm.
under the computer desk. And I'm like, why is his phone going off? And I went, picked up his phone, went through the phone, and there were text messages between he and another young lady that he worked with. And the text message thread read, basically, he was asking, why didn't you come and sit with me at lunch? Why didn't you come and sit with me?
Oh,
And, and it was like,
so
what are
he
you
was seeing
doing
somebody else?
at the job? Right. So it was like a punch to the gut because I did not expect this from him because
Yeah.
he never showed me that. Right. So I remember going back there, waking him up, and he was angry because I went through his phone. And he said, you see, that's why I don't allow you to go through my stuff. And he took his phone, changed his passcode, and he did not it's like he gaslit me into believing that I did something wrong, as opposed to acknowledging the act, apologizing for what he did, and rectifying the behavior.
Mhm.
He blamed me.
Yeah.
And that is how the relationship went for the and of course, this was the first time, but things got progressively worse. Things were, there were things but that was the start of it. And even prior to that, I know I'm kind of like jumping back and forth, but
That's okay.
before we moved in together, we switched phones. He had my phone, I had his. Why did we do that? I don't know. I was a kid, whatever. And he was like, and that's another way that he won my trust over. And he was like, I've never done this before. I've never given a woman access to my phone and whatever, whatever. Well, I had his phone, and I remember we were in North Louisiana helping my sister move into her new apartment, because she was in college there. And this woman texts his phone. And the woman that texts the phone happened to be one of his exes. And I
Mhm.
was like, why are you texting his phone? We're together. And she said, he texts me. You might want to I'm not reaching out to him. He's the one reaching out to me. And she was like, you might want to ask him about that because he's lying to you. And I asked him about it. And it's so crazy because at the time he was like, oh, don't you know people can just doctor text messages? Now, this is 2011, 2012. I don't know people who would be able to doctor text messages back then. Maybe
Mhm.
now with AI, but
Yeah.
back then, I didn't believe it, but it was like, you know what? She probably just wants to be with him, and that's what it is.
Mhm.
And it's like, and I believed it.
Yeah, so you're thinking
You
there's
know?
all these crazy exes and, like,
Yeah,
he's not the
right,
problem yet.
right. He's not the problem. So back to us living together. He there were subtle things. Like, I will say this: most abuse does not is not physical first. Most abusers will try to break you mentally before they can break you physically. And
Mhm.
that's what he would do. He would say demeaning things. He would call me out of my name. Like, B, you so fucking, and he would say, when I get big like you, I break you down, is what he would tell me. And it's just like, in hindsight, at 38, why would you want to break your partner? Why would you want to be with
Right.
someone that you would break and you take
Mhm.
pride in it?
It's like a strategy
Yeah,
almost. It's like, this is
yeah.
what I do, but
This
not at first. I wait
Not at
till I'm
first.
in, and then
Yes,
I do these things, right?
yes. And so it gradually it went from emotional abuse, um, you know, psychological, e- all the things my mother instilled in me. He It's like all those things just went away.
Yeah, he's
All the things
undoing them.
they
Mm.
I could hear my mom, "Ashley, don't you let anybody do this. You're smart, you're intelligent, you're beautiful, you're all these things. You know, don't ever let anybody make you feel like you're not." And those were things that were ingrained in me, the blueprint of who I was. And it took someone less than 6 months to come into my life, pretend to love me, and break me. And in order for abusers, narcissistic abusers, to be able to break you, they have to control you, which is through breaking you.
Mhm.
And so that's what he did. And he of course, the relationship with the mother of his kids, it was very tumultuous. There was triangulation that took place. Him telling her, unbeknownst to me, uh this is why I'm telling her, this is why I left you. I left you because this is Ashley's this, and this. And if you could never be like her, unbeknownst to me, right?
Right.
And then coming back to me and telling me the things she's saying about me. And so you're forming this, you know, um, um, this you made sure that we were going against one another because we would never come together. We would
Right.
never come together to talk about what was going on. And we would always think, well, in my mind, she's just upset because we're together now, right?
Right.
And so that's what he was doing. He used forms of triangulation. That woman hated me. She hated me because of what he was feeding to her, what he was telling her, and vice versa. And I remember I never wanted to be the reason for why she would keep the kids from him. So she would, insult me. She'd call me all kinds of names. He'd be on the phone with her. I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't say anything because I knew that if I said anything, she heard my voice. It would make it harder for him to see his children. I was always thinking about the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
But, he took my kindness. He just took that and he just totally like annihilated it. And that turned into um him going to his kid's mother's house at the wee hours of the morning, taking my keys. I'd be in bed asleep. He'd go over there. They get into it. I gotta go over there. And he would just go over there, spend hours over there, and come back in the wee hours of the morning. Or I wake up and he's not home with my car
Yeah.
and I have to be at work. So it turned into that. And while he was in the process of breaking me, it was creating a level of shame in me because I didn't want to tell my mom, Mama, look, this is what I'm experiencing. So I hid it because she already told me that this is not who you should be with,
Yeah.
right? So now I'm sitting with shame. And while I'm sitting with that, he just continued to he, he almost had like an embarrassment kink, like embarrassing me got him off,
Mhm.
you know? He would, I remember. Now, mind you, I was open with him, right? And he had access to my phone. And there was there was two guys that I was seeing before I made it official with my ex. It was my ex and another guy. And I made the decision. I said, okay, no, I'm not going to see both guys. I need to make a decision as to who I'm going to go ahead and be with
Yeah.
because that's just how I am. And I chose my ex. And of course, the other guy was like really upset. He was distraught. He was upset because he really liked me. And he was just like, I just want to, so we'll come to find out he and I never had the ex, not my ex, but the guy that I didn't choose.
Yeah.
We were friends on social media, and he was kind of like a lover boy. He loved hard,
Mhm.
So I would see him. I guess when he was going through relationship issues over social media, he would kind of mope. He would kind of like be down, and that was never him. He was an attractive guy. He had swag, and I was just like, I sent him a message. I was like, hey, like this is not you. Like, cheer up. Like you're gonna be fine. And I shared it with my ex. I told him about it. Well,
Yeah. Telling him that how you're
it
encouraging him and
yeah, and I was open about it because there was nothing to hide. And, he didn't say anything. And a few days, maybe a week or so, a couple weeks passed by. He must have forgot. And I was taking a bath, and my phone was on the counter in the bathroom. And he came in the bathroom, and he just like picked my phone up and just starts going through it. And of course, I'm not upset about it, whatever. And he goes to my Facebook messages and he sees the message, and he's like, what the? are you doing? Like, oh, what you having a conversation with him for? And I'm like, I was like, I told you what happened. Like, why are you
Mhm.
flipping out? Like, I no, you didn't. What you? And he was getting to the point where it's like he was going to physically like put his hands on me. And he was like, call that right now. Call him. And I'm like, why am I going to do? No, you call that. You want to. So he then contacts the guy. The guy thinks it's me calling him. He picks up the phone and he's like, say, my boy, you calling my girl and da da da. He was like, what are you talking about? Like, me and Ashley don't, what are you talking? Oh, you need a, so it was a huge thing. He made it this huge thing. Mind you, he
Yeah.
wanted to meet up with the guy so they could fight. So he was like, meet me over here. So he's like, come on, you coming. So he's degrading me. He's berating me. I'm sitting in the front seat of the car like I'm quiet. He's just disrespecting me, calling me out of my name, telling me how much of a hoe I am.
That
And
is horrible.
so he gets to the place, which was basically his old hood. And there was a bunch of guys outside and I'm sitting in the car. I'm sitting in the front seat. And I can hear him because the car's not on, and he's basically, yeah, this bitch, I caught her texting a nigga like, oh, bitches ain't nothing, just a dime a dozen, just saying all types of stuff. And I'm sitting there, and these guys are laughing, and he's just berating me. And
Mhm.
so, of course, the guy doesn't show up because he's like, he's not even on that, like,
Right.
and that was that was one of the first times like he embarrassed me, like, and he would do that throughout the relationship. And I I'm trying to remember like the first time it got physical, and I want to say the first time it got physical was I went through his phone again one night, and I don't know how I guessed his passcode, but I was just putting in a bunch of numbers, and it opened.
Mhm.
And he was carrying on conversations with different women, like on Facebook. Mind you, I created his Facebook. He was talking to so many different women, texting old girlfriends. And see, the thing about him, he'll give you a little bit of the truth, but
Yeah.
it's mixed in with a bunch of lies. And so I saw him texting old girlfriends, and they're talking about the things they used to do together, like really inappropriate things for a man that's supposed to be in a relationship. Well, he wakes up out of his sleep. He sees that I'm not in the bed and I'm in the kitchen, literally sitting down on the floor, going through the phone. He sees the phone. He grabs the phone out of my hand. And of course, you stupid B and da 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 da. And I remember like, just what are you like, why are you doing this? And his thing is if a woman is I don't know, I don't want to say too naggy, but if a woman is complaining or whining or
Mhm.
whatever, he almost gets like so agitated, and he'll like his body will like contort because he's like, I can't stand. And that was the first time he actually slapped me. And I was shocked. I
Yeah.
was shocked because I could not believe that he hit me.
And you didn't do anything wrong. You're thinking he did this before because she did something to him. Like this is a volatile relationship they have, but not me. Right. And then he hits you. You're shocked. And then what happened next?
I just I froze. I remember crying, and the thing about him is he wasn't immediately apologetic. He was like basically saying basically saying like, "Oh, you wanted me to do that to you," or um, you know, "You always got so." He wasn't apologetic until some time passed, and he'll be, I'm sorry, B, I'm sorry," and the slaps would turn into me. I would get choked, like
Mhm.
violently choked. And it was always, if he felt like I would say something that he deemed disrespectful, it would turn, he would corner me sometimes, like in a house or he would get me to where my back was up against the wall or
Mhm.
in a corner, and he would just be in my face, and he would just like be like rubbing his hands together like he's trying to get himself to not hit me. And he would just violently choke me, you know?
Yeah.
And there were like of course I still like to this day I still have, like scars from being choked by him. And so he never his there were always justifications for why he would do what he did. There were always justifications.
What did these justifications sound like?
Um Basically, if he thought that something I said was disrespectful, like like if I were to, talk back after a certain, after he said something, it wouldn't be initially, but if he felt like I was getting a little too, it would cause him to do that. If he felt like in his mind, like he thought that he had his mind made up about something that he believed I did,
Yeah,
he would he would assault me, he would attack me. Um, and I'm just like, I'm sitting here because I'm trying to think of things that I'm like, were there things? There was no justification for the things that he did.
there
None.
never is
Absolutely none.
justification for somebody
Yeah.
and somebody else besides they decided to hurt somebody else. Unless
Right.
you're defending yourself, self-defense or something, I mean,
Yeah.
that it's just uncalled for.
Yeah. So he would do all of those things. He would there was a time, and narcissists, I have to say this too, are very, very insecure, even though they make it seem like they're not.
Yeah.
He was very insecure. I can remember a time where of course, I'm from Southwestern Louisiana. I was going to college here during some of the hottest days of the year, and I wore like
Mhm.
shorts and like a Aeropostale shirt to class. And he had took my car out there. I don't know if he had to be at work or he went somewhere, and I was home at the apartment, and he was friends with this younger guy that lived in the complex. And the guy came over, knocked on the door to ask if he was there. I opened the door. Hey, no, he's not here. I'll let him know that you came by. Closed the door. That was it. When he came back home, I told him, I said, hey, such and such came over and, he was looking for you, but I let him know you weren't here. And he looked at me. Now, mind you, he had saw me because I went to school that day. And he said, you opened the door with that on? And I said, yeah. And he said, my girl, you mean to tell me you opened the door with that on? You wanted to be seen. You wanted that nigga to see you. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, I had just got back from class. Like, what are
Mhm.
you saying? So he would harbor on things like that, right? And I remember a few days later, I guess he was still upset about it.
Mhm.
And I had went grocery shopping, and I had put the groceries in the kitchen and I hadn't had a chance to like unload them. And there was like a gallon of juice. And so again, he had came in, I guess he was still upset because it was just like you just never knew with him when
Right.
he would be, so I was sitting on the sofa. He was on the phone. He was still, yeah, I told one of my partners about, the situations. And I said, and they think it too. They feel like you were looking for attention too. And I was like, basically, I'm like, that's not true. That's not true. I wasn't looking for attention. I don't know,
Right.
I don't know what you're talking about. He was like, you know what so he goes in the kitchen. He was like, say that again. He said, if you say that one more time, I'm going to take this gallon of juice and I'm going to pour it all over you. And I'm sitting on the couch. He's standing over me with the juice. And he was just like, I'm like, I don't know why you think that. That is not true. This man poured an entire gallon of juice in my face. He poured an entire gallon of juice in my face, and he thought it was funny. He thought it was funny, and he would talk about it with his friends, and he laughed about it. And they were like, "Boy, you poured a gallon of juice in her face." He said, and he thought it was funny.
Yeah.
So he did that. And it was just a lot of manipulation. I would find, phone numbers. I would find condoms. I would find, you know, in his pockets, in my car. There was I would, he had these expectations of me that he did not have for himself. I had to be on time to pick him up from work. And if I wasn't on time to pick him up from work, he had a problem. But ask me how many times he was late picking me up from work in my car
Every
or
time.
didn't show up
Mhm.
almost all the time. And if I was angry about it, he would get upset or annoyed because I was angry about it.
Yeah. So that was a way to keep you from getting angry, right? So then you had
Yeah,
to he is coming late to pick you up and you have to be like all composed and thank you for
yeah,
coming to get me, right?
yeah, right? And so my my wash days for when I would wash clothes would be on Sundays. And on Sundays was his day that he spent with his kids. So he'd drop I would load up all the clothes at our apartment because we didn't have a washer dryer. We had a washateria, but my mom said it was okay for me to come and wash clothes at the house. So he would drop me off at the house and he would go and spend the entire day at his baby mom's house with the kids, right? And my mom used to always say, "Ashley, he's still screwing that girl." That's exactly what she's saying. And I'd be like, "No, that's not true. He's disgusted with her." And he would tell you that I would never, I'm so disgusted with her. I would never be with her again. She's so this, she's so that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Oh, that would never happen." I would be more concerned or more worried about other women, but not her. And so I was at my mom's house washing clothes, and probably around like 9 p.m. Or close to 9, I text him and said, "Hey, I'm done. You can come over and come and pick me up and we can go home." So he did. He came and picked me up, and I noticed that we weren't going home. We weren't going in the direction of our house. And where he was going was, there was this strip club that a lot of guys that, was from the same hood that he was from, they would go and they would just hang out and whatever else. He was going in that direction. And when I noticed that's where he was going, I told him, I said, "Hey, listen, I have to be up early." I said, "Please don't stay in here all night. I have to get up for work in the morning." And he was like, "Okay, don't worry about it. I'm just going to run in. I'm going to run out."
Yeah.
So he parks right in the front of the strip club. He turns the car off. He takes the keys. He goes inside. He left me in that car for hours. Hours.
Whoa.
I was I wasn't dressed appropriately to go in. I didn't have an ID to go in, whatever. So he finally comes out. Mind you, it's a Sunday, so they close at a certain time. He comes out when it's closing. And I'm infuriated. I'm infuriated because I asked you not to do that. And
Yeah.
you did it anyway. And he gets in the car. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, babe." And I'm just like, "I don't want to hear that. You're disrespectful. I asked you not to do it and you did it anyway." And I'm just like, going off, going off. So he's driving. And he's just like, I could see he's kind of like getting frustrated and, he's annoyed with hearing my voice. And out of nowhere, he backhands me. I had never been hit that hard in my life. And I felt like in that moment, I literally saw stars. I kid you not.
Yeah.
He backhanded and it hit me in like above my lip,
And you
my
didn't
mouth.
see it coming too, so you
I
weren't
did
even
not
there was no
see it
way to
coming.
brace or anything, you just
And I felt my face was hot and I felt like first of all, it was a tingling sensation all across my face. And then all of a sudden I felt blood drip into my mouth. And I remember cupping my hand like this to kind of catch the blood. I thought that he knocked my tooth out in
Mhm.
that moment. And he's just like, "B, I told you about your mouth and da 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 your mouth, and I was so I was hurt. I was shocked.
Yeah.
And the thoughts in my mind were, "I cannot believe that I'm going through this. I cannot believe that I'm experiencing this." And I remember we made it home. I like put the clothes down. I ran in my room. I went in literally in bed and was in the fetal position. And I just cried.
Yeah.
And he came up. And after a while, he came up behind me. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." And I remember screaming at the top of my lungs. I remember saying, "I wish my dad was a part of my life so that I can call him and he could beat the fuck out of you."
Uh-huh.
And he was like he couldn't believe I said that. And so he just was like, you know, there was no justification for him doing that. He would do things like, to mind you, he didn't help me pay bills. I was in college.
It's always the story. It's like they come in so strong, like and even if they're not like working, that they're gonna be doing something around the house, they're gonna be useful. And then once they
Mhm.
get there, they do nothing.
He was working, but he
Mhm.
told me that because I had more than him because I had a vehicle, because I had more than him and I had family that I could rely on that he couldn't
He
help
couldn't
because
help because you had help.
yes.
Mhm.
He would get jobs, he'd get fired. So, and it was so hard for him to come by a job because his record was so bad. So he would get jobs, but then he had issues with wasting money, blowing money. He want to go out to the club, he want to have a good time, but you're not contributing to the household. Now he's taking care of his kids financially,
Yeah.
he's doing that. But as far as the household, no, no. And he would say things like, yeah, just, I know, I'm with you and I live here, but I run things over there too, talking about the baby mama's house,
He said
right?
that after y'all moved in together though, right? Not
Yes.
before.
He said that after. He said that, yeah, he said that after. So there were a lot of things, and come to find out, he had lot mind you, I didn't find this out till well after the relationship, but he was dealing with multiple women. I didn't, and I guess you could say there was proof. I found phone numbers and text messages, but you know, maybe it was just because I didn't really, I don't know, want to see it, but he was. And it would be to the point where I would look at his Facebook and see the conversations he was engaged in with different women. I mean, women across the country. And he was just like, and then he would just say things like, Margot, you're not all that. No. Like he would degrade me. He would tell me, he'll even now, one of the things that he says, like when he still has my mom's number, so he'll try to like call her block and just he'll insult me to her. Her ugly ass daughter. Where that ugly be? Like, oh yeah. Mm-hmm. He'll say all those things. And it's just, he even, it's crazy because he was so manipulative, and
Yeah.
I didn't know the things that he was doing, and it's like he knew though. He knew. Even passing on a sexually transmitted disease, thank God it was curable,
Mhm.
and he knew that he was involved with different women. He knew it. This man called my mother to come over to our apartment, and he told my mom that he believed I gave the STD to him. Now, you have to be twisted to know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. And
Uh-huh.
then to almost convince yourself that I was the one to give it to you.
And be that angry about it as if it really happened that way, knowing what he did.
Knowing. Now, mind you, I'm a female. We get checked every year.
Uh-huh.
Every year. And it's like, what are you talking about? And I remember when the doctor called me and told me, like, hey, this is what we found. You tested positive for this. And I remember, mind you, I was being abused. I remember calling him because I was at work, and I said, "Hey, I need to ask you something, but I don't want you to lie to me. I'm not gonna get angry." And I asked him, I said, "The doctor just called me and they said this is what they told me." And I said, "Have you been with anybody else?"
Uh-huh.
And he says, "No." I said, "I need for you to tell me. I'm not gonna get angry with you. I just want for you to be honest with me." "No, no, I haven't." And then you turn around and you embarrass me by calling my mom over to our house and trying to convince her that I gave you a sexually transmitted disease, knowing full well that you were sleeping with multiple women. So he would do that. And then he would say that he would talk about like my feminine region. He would make fun of me and he would tell me that I had an odor. And
Uh-huh.
here's the thing, as women, that can very well happen. And it could be something like bacterial vaginosis. But
Uh-huh.
that happens from men sleeping with different women and coming back and sleeping with a woman. But
Uh-huh.
he embarrassed me, and he had told his baby mama this about me. He
Uh-huh.
told his own mom that. Mind you, that's another story for another day. And they would use those things to make fun of me. you know? So it just goes back to what I said about him having like an embarrassment kink. Like
Yeah.
he would embarrass me. He would degrade me. He would just whatever and I was like, Why are you telling people this that are not in our relationship? Why are you telling people
Yeah.
this?
Nobody
You
wants
know?
to hear this about themselves, especially other people who shouldn't even know
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. So, he did all of those things. Now, mind you, at this point, it was just I was broken. I accepted it. I I don't want to say I believe the things he said, but I did. I believed the things that he said about me. I believed that nobody would love me or knew me the way that he knew me because it's like I was holding on for dear life for the title, but I
Yeah,
was
and
still
for who he showed you he was in the beginning, too. I
yeah,
mean, you're always waiting for that person to show back up. You're
yeah,
thinking, "Oh my goodness, they're overwhelmed, they're
yeah,
stressed, these people are horrible to them." You're not thinking, "This person is strategically trying to hurt me." Not
yeah,
but
yeah,
at this point, you're onto it. You're like, "So
yeah,
he
yeah.
he's not
And
who I
so,
thought he was."
the abuse continued, the cheating and talking to other and I say cheating, but clearly he was, and the women, it just never stopped.
Yeah.
Him coming in all hours of the night. Sometimes I'd have to be up for work in the morning. He wouldn't be home in my car. I'd have to call coworkers to bring me to work. Um, didn't help pay any bills, didn't help with any groceries, but expected me to do it because, as a woman, and then that turned into finding out 5 years late, almost 5 years later, that his baby mama was pregnant again. And I found out because, mind you, they had a very tumultuous relationship.
Mhm.
Even while we were together, he went to jail for domestic violence, of course. I'm like, he would come back and say, that's not true. Mind you, she suffered with her own sobriety. She also had issues as well. So they were very volatile. It started to turn into a battle of him trying to get custody of his kids because at the time, it did seem as if he was the best fit because of her addiction.
Mhm.
And, that turned into her being pregnant. And I found out that she was pregnant because he ended up going to jail because he was abusive towards her. And I want to say at the time there was a protective order in place, but they would basically like ignore it and still allow him to come over. And I guess when he got too abusive, it turned physical, she called the police. And so while he was in jail waiting for, I don't, to see the judge, because sometimes they'll hold you and whatever else, I walked into a convenience store on my way home and I stopped by there before I made it home. And of course, I knew I was going to expect his call because he called every day at a certain time.
Mhm.
And I walked into the convenience store and there was a girl that was working there, working behind the counter who I went to high school with. And she says, "Hey, Ashley, um, she said, that's your car?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, that's my car." She said, "You date that guy that has he's kind of light skinned. He has the dreads." And she said, "And his baby mama is the white girl." I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, she lives in my complex." And I said, "Oh, okay." I was like, small world, you know? And she
Right.
said, "You know she's pregnant, right?" And I said, "What?" I was like, "She's pregnant?" She said, "Yeah, she's pregnant." And I said, "Oh my gosh." I was like, "I wonder if he knows." And here I am thinking I'm getting this, you know,
T
tea,
to tell
right?
him, right?
To tell him. And she says, "You sure it's not his?" And I was like, "Oh no, there's no way, there's no possible way." And da da da. She was like, "Okay, well, girl, she's pregnant." And so I remember, okay, so I said, "Well, I can't wait till he calls. I'm gonna tell him." So he calls, couldn't wait for him to call. And I said, "Hey, you'll never believe what I found out." And I said, "Such and such is pregnant." And he didn't say anything. He wasn't shocked. He was kinda like, "Oh, yeah, I think I knew, I knew that." And I'm just like, "Why isn't he?" Mind you,
Mention it.
naive, me thinking like, "Well, damn, why isn't he?" Not thinking that this could potentially be his baby. So, he gets out of, jail or whatever. The sheriff's deputy would come to our apartment delivering, summons and all the time. So he got out of jail. The sheriff deputy comes over, delivered, and by this point, he knew us. And so I'm reading the document, and the girl wrote in the document, the baby mama wrote that he was abusive towards her, and the abuse would lead to him forcing her to engage in sexual activity. And I remember reading it and I was like, do you know what this means? I said, first off, are you sleeping with her? No, 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 I'm not sleeping with her. She's lying. If they believe that, tell him to swab her, right? And I'm
Mhm.
just like, swabbing her, that's not gonna prove anything.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
it was just so many different things, and it was just like so mind you, her and I had our own back and forths. Like she ended up keying my car, and I was like, I just got this car, and I noticed that the hood on my car was keyed, and I was like, what happened? Oh, I don't know. And I'm like, dude, you were in my car last, and you were at her house last. I said, so she did this. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. We can get it buffed out. Now, mind you, it wasn't a big deal because it was my stuff. But had it been yours, it would have
Oh,
been World War III.
yeah,
You know
that
what I
would have
mean?
been it. Yeah.
And I'm like, I work hard for my stuff just for her to like destroy it. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. I told you I would pay to get it buffed out. Shut the fuck. Did he pay to get it buffed out?
No.
Absolutely not. No, he didn't. But he was still in it. He was still using it. And so one day, I ended up having, she had got my phone number to my job. At the time, I was working for an oil and gas company, and she got the direct line to my desk.
Mhm.
She's under the influence of something, and she's like, "Look, I just want to tell you that I'm pregnant." And this is before I found out about her actually being pregnant. And I've been pregnant several times, but I had abortions for him. I've been pregnant multiple times, and I'm just trying to figure out like what's going on. And I'm just like, what is she talking about? So in my mind, he's convinced me that she's this loony, crazy girl, which I'm seeing that she is because of the things that she's doing to me and whatever
Yeah.
else, right? But the things that I'm not paying attention to is like, how would she know my number to my job? How would she get that? There's no way that she can look in a phone book and find a directory from my personal desk phone,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't make all of this analysis until way after when her and I had a sit down.
Right.
And so there was that. Her and I went back and forth. I ended up having to file a protective order against her. Not that I was afraid, but just to keep her away from me.
Yeah, you had
And
enough with everything else that was going on. I totally
right.
understand that.
And she walks into the courtroom and she's literally like 8.5 months pregnant. And I want to say this wasn't for our protective order, this was theirs, but I was there as a witness for him. And I'm sitting next to him. I'm like the doting girlfriend, just proud to be by his side. And he had asked the judge if I could sit next to him in the courtroom on his side. And the judge said, yeah, that's fine, she can. She's sitting on the other side and she says, she's in here sitting with him and he beating her in a courtroom full of people. Of course, I don't say anything. And then she says, and she's sitting here or whatever, and I'm pregnant with his baby. And I'm like, what? Because that was the first time I had heard that. And
Right.
he's just sitting there, like, not saying nothing. If somebody's saying something that's a lie to you, you're going to be like, that's not
No.
true. What is she
Right.
talking
Saying
about?
something.
He says nothing. So I remember when we left the courthouse, I said, is that true? And he says, "Man, I don't know what she's talking about. That ain't true. I don't know what that girl talking about, right?" And I'm like, okay. And then I want to say it was December of 2014. We were at his mom's house. She had delivered the baby already. And at that point, she had never had a Facebook before, but I guess she decided to create one. And randomly, I think I was like searching online and I found it. And she was posting pictures of the baby. And it was like, she's a white girl. So the baby was very fair skinned. And I was just like, dang, kind of looking at the baby to kind of see who the baby resembled. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
I don't know. And I remember before I get to that part, we had to keep the twins because she was having her cesarean section. And so
Mhm.
she needed the boys to stay with him and whatever, whatever. So I remember we were on our way for him to drop me off to work and he was going to be bringing the boys to school and his phone rang. And he answers the phone and then he hangs up. Then he picks up the phone again and he called. At the time, I can only
Right.
assume that it was her. And he says, B, stop giving my information to all these doctors and have them looking for you, calling me to look for you. And when she's talking, I can't hear. Now, mind you, he never put the phone on speaker
Yeah.
because you know what I mean? Which, duh. So he hangs up the phone and I'm like, what's that about? He was like, man, she got her doctors calling me looking for her. Why would she put you down on the list? Why? Why would she do that? And I'm just like, okay. So she has the baby. It's around close to Christmas time. We're at his mom's house, which that is the relationship that I had with her and how she is. That's really where his issue lies, his
Mhm.
mother wound. You know, his mother didn't do what she was supposed to, and he's searching for the love of his mother in every single woman. And when he and his hatred for the women that he's in relationships with derives from his hatred that he has for his mom.
Yep.
And we were at his mom's house and he can't sit still. So he ended up like grabbing the keys. He was like, hey, I'll be right back. So he leaves. And I'm sitting down, talking to his mom. And I was like, yeah, such and such had the baby. And she was like, yeah. And I'm like, and who's the dad? Like, I'm still trying to figure out who the dad is. And she says, you don't know who the dad is? And I said, no. Who's the dad? And she says, he's the dad. And I was like, come again? And she said, yeah. She was like, please, Ashley, please, don't say anything. Like
Yeah.
he asked me not to say anything, but and I was like, well, what did he say? And he said he just called me one day. It was like, Mom, I think I got her pregnant and I don't know what to do. Ashley's gonna leave me. And she proceeds to call her two daughters that were in another room to confirm it. And I can't tell you how many emotions went through me at that moment. First off, it
Yeah.
was not her responsibility to tell me that. And I think that, in hindsight and everything that I've been through with his mom, she did that to hurt me, but
Mhm.
it wasn't her responsibility to tell me either, right? So she was like, please don't tell him I told you and whatever, whatever, like that. And I'm just like, how do you expect me to sit with this? I live with this man. I see him every day. I've been with him for 5 years.
Yeah,
What do
and
you
this is too
mean?
big of a thing to be like, "Don't tell anybody." This is
Yeah.
something way too big.
Right. So he comes back. We get in the car and I'm silent, not saying anything. And he's like, what's wrong with you? What's your problem? And I'm just like, nothing, nothing, you know? So the
Mhm.
whole ride is it's probably about a 15-minute ride. I'm just sitting in that car and it's like 11:30, maybe midnight. And I'm just like quiet. I'm just like, it's burning me up on the
I can
inside.
only imagine you sitting there and having to hold this in.
Yeah. And we get home. I sit on the couch. He's standing up in like the kitchen area. We had these little mirrors, and he was kind of looking at himself in the mirror. And I said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." And I said, "But you have to like promise not to say anything because you know, I just I want to know." He was
Mhm.
like, "What? What?" He was like, "What? Is something my mama told you?" And I was just like, "Why did your mom insinuate that her baby was yours?" And he said, "What? She told you that? Man, she told you that?" Like getting angry. I can't believe that. I can't believe I said, no, no, no. I said, is this true? And he was like, no, man, no, that's not true. I said, well, then why would she say that? Man, I don't know. I don't know what. I told you. I told you. Every relationship I've had, my mama always tried to ruin. I
Ruin
told
it.
you that.
I knew
I
you were
told you
gonna
she's
say
always done
that's
that.
what they say, that every time, they always do that to keep the distance.
Yeah. And so he said, man, I said, listen, it's okay. Don't call her. If it's not true, it's not true. I said, but just let's just all right. He was like, I ain't gonna say nothing. He said, but when we go back over there to get the boys Christmas gifts, he said, I'm not showing her no respect. She gets no respect from me. So I'm just like, look, just, don't do that. So we go over there. We get the boys the day after Christmas. We go over there to get the gifts. And he's being disrespectful. And she doesn't know why. She's just like, what is it got to the point like when the boys were opening their gifts, he was
Mm.
making fun of the gifts. He was making, we don't, oh, what is this? We don't wear that. They don't wear, I don't buy stuff like this for them. He's being disrespectful to the point where she kicked him out. She kicked him out.
Mhm.
And so we left. And I've never had issues with any guy that I've ever dated. I've never had issues with their parents. Never. I'm always respectful. I was raised to respect any and everyone. And so there were several things that occurred in the relationship. It was like one time she did something that kind of burned me, and I just always kept her at arm's length. And I
Mhm.
think she got upset at that because she would almost try to form this, like this allegiance between her and I
Yeah.
against him sometimes, but I would never feed into it. I never trusted her quite enough to tell her anything that I wouldn't
Right.
want him to know.
Because she really was
And
playing both sides, and that's what they do.
that's what they do. And so we go home. He ended up running into one of his friends that was from where we were from. He grew up with them because I want to say he said he lived with his that friend's older sister when he was younger because he got put out at 16. He had to drop out of high school and he was homeless. And so he ended up running into him. And the guy was getting married. He was getting married in, I want to say, Hawaii or something. And he was having his bachelor party and he saw him and wanted to invite him. So he was like, yeah, I'm going to go hang, here tonight. He invited me and, so I'm like, okay, I had the boys. I had the twins. They were going to stay with me like always. So I'm like, whatever. I'm a homebody. No big deal. So he goes. The boys and I they were young. They were probably like 5 at the time. And so I was the first woman that they had been around outside of their mom. So,
Mhm.
I nurtured them. I made sure they had good Christmases. Like, I would decorate. I spent time with them. I would read with them. And they had actually we fell asleep in the bed. All of us, we fell asleep. So probably around midnight, I hear the key being put into the keyhole and the door opening. And I kind of woke up and I'm like, man, this is early for him. That's what I said in my head. Like, this is
Yeah.
early for him to be in after a night out. So he comes in the bedroom and he says, yeah, you told me what my mama said, but you didn't tell me what you said. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, yeah. He said, you gonna sit there and tell me everything my mama said, but you didn't tell me what you said. And I'm like, now mind you, I'm just coming out of sleeping, right? So
Right.
I'm flustered, like I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's getting angry. He's getting more and more angry. And he's inching closer to my face. I'm sitting up in the bed, but he's inching close to my face. And she was like getting angry, the visible, I could see it, right? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? And he said, yeah. He said, you told me that my mama told you that her baby is mine. I said, yeah, she did. And he said, but you didn't tell me that you told her if, as a woman, if you wanted to get away with something that you could. And I said, are you serious? I said, first off, I said, she's leaving out context. I said, he would always accuse me of cheating on him or doing something, right? Which is clearly guilty conscience because of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I said, I remember having a conversation with your mom and I was crying about it because he's always accusing me. And I said, as women, if we wanted to do something, they never know
Right.
casually because she had nothing else that she could pull, right? There's nothing else that she could say that I told her. She told him that. And I don't know if he was trying to flip the script to find to take the heat off of him and me basically being delivered the news that he's potentially the father of this child and then trying to reverse it on me to say, yeah, but look what you said,
Yeah.
right? And I said, well, he's screaming, he's angry, and I was like, well, what is the truth? What is the truth? Now, mind you, by this time,
Mhm.
the boys are waking up because he's being loud. And he says he comes within an inch of my face and he says, you want to know the truth? The truth is, I went over there one night, I popped a pill, the and I don't know if the baby's mine or not. That's how he told me. And I was like frozen. And in that moment, it reminds me of the same way he handled my emotions when I caught him texting the woman at his job.
Mhm.
No accountability, you know, turning around and making it as if I was the reason that these things or it was my fault for something.
Yeah.
And that he he never sat me down to have a conversation. He never like, and I say comfort, but he never said like, look, Ashley, like, I know you're probably feeling a million different things, because that was the only way he knew how to do that, because anger was the only emotion that he knew how to express.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he felt that way or he had to make some sort of a justification in his mind to justify him being angry at me and how he was going to own up to the fact that this could potentially be his child.
Yeah, they always use shame, and like you said, it's a self-esteem thing, so they don't have any.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it looks like they do, they appear to be confident, but anything they accuse you of, it says any accusation is actually a confession for them. You're doing. So it's like, so if they accuse you of doing something, they're that angry at you because they really think that you did it.
Yeah. And they know what type of people they are. So they automatically think that everyone is just like them.
Mhm.
So that's like the halfway point of my story. That's like the 5-year mark. And then so everything that I told you was from the end of 2010 to 2015. And then we moved to Texas
Yeah.
after that happened.